he's practiced law too, but he loved the ponies.
Yeah.
All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, welcome very much to Conversations. It's a pleasure to welcome to the program Alton Maddox. And he's being billed as a lawyer at war. And I would say that in talking with him and knowing him a bit, we're going to get to know each other better in the time ahead. He is at war with the injustice which is legion in this world, and on the side of the people that are being not well served by the system as it goes along. And Alton, so good to welcome you to the conversation. It's so good to see you again.
Well, Hal, I'm very pleased for the invitation, and I just threw down everything else I was doing to be here with you.
Well, I thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. You've done programming in the past, and maybe it's worth going over specifically for you. We got you down as, let me see, in the email, the thing at the end is you're being reinstated. Reinstate AltonMaddox.com or something. Reinstated. Yeah. And that movement is moving ahead because you had a little problem with the fact that you were being a lawyer and all. But maybe we could touch on that, because let's talk about that in real terms, what the reality is, what the trend is, because I think there's a chance things may be moving in a good direction, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Good, I'm glad to hear it.
Direction for me.
Yeah.
And, I think that 24 years ago, after about 20 years in the legal profession, people decided to bring that to a halt, and they did. The problem was in the way that they did it, because the people that did it defined this country as a nation of white men, and not a nation of equal laws. And so, right. And so
they had this thing called chattel slavery.
Absolutely right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
And so, as a result of that, I needed time off because I generally had represented most people pro bono.
Yeah.
In other words, I didn't charge. And
people that couldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're just being persecuted by the system operating in its own terms.
And you see, and the other side about it is that I really wanted to deal with Dred Scott.
Okay, yeah,
and the only way you could really deal with Dred Scott in some of these high-profile cases, where it was glaring that rights were being abused. And so that's what my career was really centered around, representing people.
Right from the get-go, you were in that?
Pretty much. Well, from the beginning, I started as a property lawyer.
You did?
On 125th Street in Harlem. And I did that for 3 years. And then I moved on to the National Conference of Black Lawyers. And I directed the Juvenile Defense Project there.
How did you get into law from just the early beginnings of your life? You were down in Georgia.
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. How did you get to the law and educating? That's quite a feat in itself. Did the family help? What was the family setting? How did you get to be able to become a lawyer man?
Well,
that's something in itself.
It was really the experiences.
Okay.
And one of the glaring experiences was a neighbor of mine who worked as a delivery man for a grocery store. Yeah. And he had, on this particular occasion, he had come home from Friday night good times. Yeah. And he went to sleep in the middle of the day. And so the employer was, had all these orders backed up and wanted to know, well, with this guy,
Yeah.
And so when he finally...
He didn't show up for work, you mean?
He didn't show up for work.
Right,
well, he showed up for work, but he took some delivery and then went home and went to sleep.
Okay, well,
But he thought, he could do that and get back to the job. Unfortunately, on this particular time, he just couldn't get back.
Right, okay,
and so when he got back, the employer and his son was there waiting for him to dish out some summary justice.
Oh, no. Violence?
Oh, yeah, with their fist.
Oh, my God.
And so at that particular time, he had what is called old trusty, blacks with switchblade knives. And he put out a switchblade knife and went to work. And he cut up his employer and his son, and they in turn went to the courts and had a complaint sworn out against him.
Okay.
And so what happened is that the mother of the perpetrator went to a lawyer who was well respected, and the lawyer just simply took it that, based on the facts that he heard, without even dealing with the idea of race, that it had to have been a black-on-black situation.
Ah, actually, yeah, it was black on white.
Right,
yeah,
but it was black on white,
yeah,
but the lawyer thought it was, just a black-on-black situation.
Yeah, right.
And so the way that justice is resolved in these small towns is that he went down to the courthouse, and while he was there, he told the judge, that he wanted to work out some deal so he could get out on bail, his client. And the judge informed him for the first time that he would represent the Negro who had harmed 2 white men.
What happened?
Well, what happened was the lawyer who had first been retained called the mother back and told her, why didn't you tell me that your son had cut up 2 white men?
Yeah, right. Okay.
And
that shouldn't make a difference.
Well, it did.
It shouldn't.
It did. Right. It shouldn't.
I know.
Right,
but it sure as hell did.
It
I understand where you're down Georgia.
Georgia, right? Absolutely.
Yeah. Although it applies all over the world.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. It does. And so what happened was, she had to go to Atlanta then, which was 30 miles away.
Right.
And the top lawyer in Atlanta was a guy by the name of Donald Hollowell.
Okay.
And Donald Hollowell came down to Noon and tried the case. And that's where a lot of us really saw a lot of legal activity going on, because TV wasn't really set up that much to have court TV or something like that.
Yeah, right.
So, whenever you heard of a big time case, it was like Joe Louis and Max Mellon.
Yeah, right.
So everybody wanted to be there to see it.
Yeah.
And even though it was a segregated courtroom, we had to go up in the balcony. And white people were down on the floor. But everybody wanted to see it.
Right.
And so Donald Hollowell was able to convince the jury not to convict him of the most violent charges.
Yeah.
And so he got a sentence where he was sent to the county jail, which meant that it wasn't a major felony. And so he went to the county jail, and Donald Hollowell said, "Well, look, I'd like to take this case up on appeal."
Okay.
But Marion, not really knowing what the law really did, he was afraid that they may take back what he had won. So he feared that he may get something worse than what he got in lower court if he went to the appellate court. So he told Donald Hollowell, to leave it alone. He was satisfied with what he got. He'd do his 12 months in jail, and that was it. And so those kind of things that really inspired me, to really go into the legal profession.
And were you inspired? What was the family? Was the family encouraging?
Oh yeah, well,
because you're taking an intellectual course. You're really, was the family encouraging?
No, my family was not encouraging at all, because
against the grain.
Against the grain, because there were no lawyers in the family.
Yeah.
And the only thing that my family knew, because they were very religious, was that lawyers were liars.
Yeah, right. Well, the shenanigans.
Okay.
The shenanigans are often the case of what goes on in the legal system.
And so my mother was dead set against it. She going to law school. She really wanted me to go to medical school.
Yeah.
And so, but I just had that love for the law. I thought it was very combativeness. And I, felt like that was me.
Did you pick that up young or something?
Abe
Lincoln learned the law in front of a log fire out in Illinois.
Right, sure, absolutely.
You were interested in that. You read Clarence Darrow for the defense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Clarence Darrow was
absolutely.
A hero? Yeah, I was raised on Clarence Darrow. My daddy was a lawyer.
Well, there was a big case in Michigan that he handled.
He did, the Scopes?
Relating to blacks trying to get housing.
Yeah,
the lynch mob, out there, and one person got hurt, and so.
But you just cotton on as a young man. Are you talking now sub-teen?
I'm talking about Clarence Darrow.
No, I know Clarence.
Right,
Clarence
right,
Darrow.
Sure. And I'm just saying that those kind of things arise, and that's what was things that sort of influenced me. because I didn't see the law as treating people equitably.
All right. That's
Yeah,
really good. That's
right.
a big indictment,
Right,
and
sure.
it didn't.
And it didn't.
And they had things
Right.
like they called it slavery.
Absolutely.
Now, how
right.
in the hell can you have something like that and call it just? And then they had
Right.
Fugitive Slave Act.
Right, sure.
And that was thought of as being the order of the day.
Absolutely,
And it was
right.
all economic interests and that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But it was baloney in terms of what ought to be, don't you think?
Oh, it was
We're
very-
so far off, and the law reifies
Right.
or reestablishes those institutions that there, and you could be put in jail if you didn't turn the slave man back.
Right, absolutely, and that's
What kind of a world is that?
Well, it was for me. It was,
It still
it
holds.
was
I
bad.
think.
You know,
The,
I mean,
the
it does.
people, the
It
people
does
with all the
still
guns
hold.
and the
Sure.
power and everything could do what the hell ever they want.
Well,
and everyone
they
else
wanna
has to do what
and
they're
you have
told.
to knuckle down.
Yeah,
you know?
no, that's not so
Right.
good.
No,
That's not human liberation.
absolutely,
That's
right.
not what we ought to be
No, it really is not.
trending
but,
after.
But
yeah.
that's really where we are. You know,
Yeah, it
even-
ain't just.
No, it's not.
And the
even-
law is there to protect the interests of the
Sure,
established
absolutely,
interest
right.
powers,
You know,
the established
and no
power.
question about it. And those who fight it, like
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
become victim of it.
Yeah, right. Well, they will, and they
Yeah.
have.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah. So I take my hat off to you for doing that. Training and all that. You went to Howard and you did some school. You did some training down in Georgia and that.
Well, I went to Howard undergraduate.
Yeah.
And you know, when I got to Howard, I met a lot of interesting people. In fact,
Yeah.
I think.
Were you interested in things generally? Were you interested in politics? Were you interested in all kinds of things intellectually and everything, or was it strictly the law that you were interested in?
Well, I was interested in politics until somebody told me one day.
Yeah. Politics is corrupt.
That you should stay away from politics. And they also told me it's better to advise politicians than to be a politician yourself.
Okay, what do you think of that?
I thought it was great advice.
Uh-huh.
I mean, personally,
Yeah,
you know.
it fit with your own
it fit-
ethics.
right,
your
absolutely,
Own ethics.
for sure.
You had internal ethics.
Absolutely,
yeah,
right.
Yeah,
And so that and I lived by that. Once I heard it and
Yeah.
was explained to me,
Yeah.
you know, that's became part of what I really became.
God bless
I'm
you.
still interested in politics, but I just don't want to be a
But what I'm
politician.
thinking, were you interested in physics and things like that, intellectual things other than the law, or were you grounded in the law and you saw
No,
everything through the prism of the law and that?
No, the reality. I was really more interested in science and math.
Okay, really? Okay.
I really was
You were good
more
at math?
interested, science and math.
Yeah.
But you know what happened was, after I left high school, and then as you grow, you know, I began to have an interest in those things that were not mathematical, not scientific.
Yeah.
You know, and so I, grew an interest for communications, how well to write, and those kind of things. So
Yeah,
it was a growing process.
Good for you, good
Right.
for you, good for you, good for you on all
Right.
that. And then it's a thing like that. And so you got that. And then how did it happen that you got into what do you think of the Bar Association? What do you think of the way the legal profession organizes itself and all that sort of thing? Internal, disciplines and so forth that they have, where they can tell some people they can practice and can't. And then that also, we could transmogrify or put that outside into the society where you have groups who can control the right, let's say, of a teacher to teach or of a doctor to practice, or all the certification that goes on to give some ability for somebody to do a profession or even a skilled job or something.
Well, I think it's a lot of overregulation.
You do, okay.
And
yeah.
I think that, just in my own experiences, I found myself practicing law in Brooklyn on Court Street. And, what I found as the TV camera was coming to me,
Yeah.
and as people were coming to me, it was a threat to others.
Yeah.
And so,
because you were representing some of the people who were being oppressed by the power structure that exists,
Right,
and
sure.
the people that supported that power structure,
Right.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Either they did it willingly or unwillingly. They say, well, you got to do that. We got to do that in order to earn a living, and so forth, right?
Sure,
a lot
absolutely.
of that goes on.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
And a lot of it did go on then.
And it goes on internationally.
Right, sure, international as well.
Yeah.
And so, I got involved in a process where people began to see me as a threat.
Yeah.
Because,
Well,
because
you were.
I
To
really
their
was.
interest,
Yeah,
right.
I was.
Because you were in the
yeah.
interest of the poor people.
But I wasn't thinking of it that
No,
way.
no, no.
I was just thinking about the person who was under the hammer. and trying to get that person out from under the hammer.
Sounds to me like he would have gotten along well with this guy Jesus Christ, who said you should take care of the least among you, and all of our great leaders that has been roundly ignored by the political classes throughout most all of history, don't you think?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure,
and continues to be?
Absolutely.
Is there any hope for looking ahead in that?
Well, I think the key term is, and it's a question of how fast it comes, power to the people. Now, because ultimately the people really should be making these decisions and not the oligarchy.
But we agree, you and I. It's always been like that since civilization. We don't know what it was like
because they're better organized, you know. And they have clearly interests that they are very definable.
Yeah, and that interest is one for a system that does work. I mean, buses come, things run, things go, and there's been some progress. My daddy died when he was only 48.
Okay.
He had a heart attack, right? There was no such thing. You ever had any heart problem or anything like that?
I haven't had a heart problem.
You got a heart. You're all good, right? That's good. That's good. Anyway, there's a thing called streptokinase, right?
Okay.
That's a drug. Didn't have it when he died. It had a pull motor. There's a thing they used when he came, and he had a clot. You could stick. They had a drug that you could just do it. Boom! It would break open. It would save the life. Or we got penicillin.
Right.
There's been some advances.
Sure, absolutely.
There's been some advances. There's some living better in some many ways. So you don't challenge it cavalierly.
No.
You understand what I'm saying? But you do realize that there are tremendous room for improvement, particularly something that would serve the vast majority of the people rather than just the people at the very top, as it always has primarily.
Well, and
what I'm saying?
Sure, absolutely. We talked about this earlier, where technology is really in the interest of those who are wealthy and rich and, can
Well, it does get down to, you got a cell phone? You got a cell phone?
Sure, absolutely.
You got your cell phone.
Right.
So that's the thing that's come.
Right,
and other things,
Right.
And highways and things. What I'm saying is you can be for the people who are not well served by it without being just saying we got to tear it all down. Because that's not work. We got to relate to history somehow, encompass it, make up for mistakes, make up for things that we weren't able to do historically, and then get into a new order somehow. And you got to look out for the interests of the people who've been badly served and in an unjust way by a legal system that supports the established order.
Sure, and that's where the problem.
That's a calling.
Yeah, that's a calling, but that's where the problem comes in, because once you step forward to protect those who have been victimized by the rich and wealthy, that's where the problem comes in. Because to the system, it seems like the way we can resolve this is by eliminating this person who's causing the problem.
Yeah, right.
And then we can move ahead.
They used to put them up on the cross and things like that. I mean, very seriously. And it's very bad. And that's the thing that still goes on. And a lot of the politics that goes on is served by that. I wonder if we're ever going to get to a point where it can be something that not only can reify or relate to the effective changes within the system, as well as the new capabilities that are coming and everything, in a way where everybody could be included in a way that allows that nobody loses. Well, you know, that's a dialectic that says zero sum. If one wins, somebody else has to lose. All based on there not being enough, for one thing, in a material way. Do you understand?
Sure.
Do you ever think we'll get to a point where there will be enough?
Well,
and that we will have a world that can be really just so that everybody realizes their own potential without harming anybody else, including all of the ecology. Do you think we may be getting to a point of a break point in terms of what's going on this planet?
I personally don't think so. I mean, myself.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because, you know, because it seems as though that we are living in a society where you can never change your position. I mean, in other words, when we were brought here as enslaved Africans, the justification for that was that we were prisoners of war.
Well, yeah, they would make up something like that to justify their...
Right. You know, that we were prisoners of war. Now, the reality of it is, in 2014, we seem to still be prisoners of war. You know, and this is a real problem. You know, I mean, when do you move from being a prisoner of war? You know, and, you know, when you study the history of this country particularly, you know, you find that the prison system is always a backup for emancipation. So
a backup for emancipation.
For emancipation, So basically, what that generally means is that we have never been to the point where people say, "Well, we're going to liberate you," but they did say, as Abe Lincoln said, "We're going to emancipate you," which is not the synonym, which is not a synonym for liberation, But the point is that there was always a fear that if we really got out of our place, that the prison system would be there to back that up. And that's where the problem is, because I mean, when do people ever see us as whole? Without needing some cushion to protect themselves from us. And that's where the problem comes in with the police and everybody else, because you become a threat.
We got 2.5 million people in prison in this country.
Absolutely.
The highest rate in anywhere in the world.
In the world,
now, what the hell is that? When we got all the resources, all the wealth and everything, you would think we'd be able to have a more equitable society, so you wouldn't have that. And they wouldn't be, a lot of them are for smoking a joint or some little thing that was of no consequence.
Absolutely.
Except, so there's still problems.
Because the smoking of a joint today is like loitering 100 years ago, where you didn't have a job and you were, guilty of not having a job and being a charge on society.
What do you call that? Loitering?
Yeah, loitering, and being a charge on society in such a way that society figures that the safest place for you to be is in a jail cell. Well,
I tell you, it's really something. Well, how did it get to be? Now, we started off talking about the Bar Association and all that.
Right.
Now, we got this thing, and the title, or the thing we want people to go to is, again, www. Reinstatealtonmaddox.org. .net. Okay.
Right.
Reinstate.
Right.
What's the status of the reinstatement thing that is being encouraged by that and ought to be encouraged by one, and also that you can be in a position to effectively do your humanitarian work for the least among us, and we should protect those who will do that. Bill Kunstler, kinds of people like that.
Right.
Those few So what's the status of the Alton Maddox
Well,
situation?
the status is this. I was never suspended nor disbarred, even though that's what the media said. And therefore people believe that.
It's another institution that could be looked at with chagrin.
Right.
The media.
The media. All right. And so I was disbarred, but it never happened. And the reason why it never happened, because it could only happen if this was a nation of white men and not equal laws. Then it could happen. If this, on the other hand,
nation of white men,
right?
Okay,
and so
that's what it's been,
and that's what it's been. That's what it's been. And so, as a result of that, these men who have access to the fourth estate and all of that, are able to use these levers to continue to control the minds of the oppressed.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, and so people just simply say, hey, if I read in the New York Post, I read in the Daily News, or whatever.
It's
gotta be.
That's it.
Right, that's it.
Thank you for trying to help me there.
And so that's really the bottom line.
Yeah.
And so
a lot of that's got to do with money, does it not?
It very much has to do with money.
The role of money is not adequate in this country. Did you see how concentrated the wealth of this country has become?
Very concentrated.
Obscene.
Worse
than it was in 1789 France. The inequality, it's all gone to the top, has it not?
Absolutely right.
And they're getting the technology supplanting the labor relationship to production.
Absolutely.
We got a big problem ahead of us. This guy, what's his name, Piketty, he's done this thing that everybody in Washington's reading, that the robotization is coming as fast as the information technology, exponential, displacing the labor production.
Absolutely, right.
So they got a problem in being able to get effective demand into the hands of the people of the world to clear the market of what can be produced without the need of their labor input. That's a major challenge that's coming out of the technological reality, is it not? And do we have a policy that is addressing with something other than let's get a job for everybody? That's all they ever say.
Right, that's all they ever say.
The only reason you're going to form capital is to get a thing for the lesser people, the advantaged people. so they can get a job on the estate where all the assets that are producing the wealth are owned by, like the kings used to do in the castle while the people were walling around in the mud.
Yeah, well, see, the thing...
That sounds like history to me.
Well, it is, but you see, this is the thing about it. As it relates to us, I mean, when I say black people...
You're talking about black people. I'm not black.
Right, I know that.
I know.
And I'm just going to explain.
Black in a certain way.
know, well, you're originally black.
That's true.
So,
we're all African.
Right, absolutely.
We're all African.
Right, absolutely.
That's a fact. Yeah.
Right, that's a fact. But this is what I'm saying. When we came over here with full employment.
Yeah, full employment on the plantation.
Right, on the plantation.
Full employment.
It was full employment.
And look, they're all happy down there singing and slapping their knee. And
absolutely. So that's the whole point. We started talking about jobs. I mean, some of us don't see it that way. And when I was growing up, I had a good friend of mine, and he said, I would never get a job. And I would say, why, Reuben? And he would say, because work killed my dad.
What?
Work killed my dad.
Work killed my dad?
Right.
They worked him to death.
Right. So
it was terrible out in those cotton fields, man. That hot sun, man.
Absolutely.
That was terrible.
It was terrible. So, here's a man, even as a youngster, said, I would never get a job. Because I'm not going to let it happen to me what happened to my daddy. And so when people see people unemployed, there's reasons why people are unemployed. Not necessarily because they're lazy or shiftless. It's just a historical point of view.
Well, there's also a lot of the things that are being done. And look at the students coming out of college. They're coming out with huge debt now.
Right, absolutely.
They got it's like a big burden on their back.
Absolutely. Headed back to debtors' prisons.
Like that. They had debtors' prisons in the old days.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And that's where you're headed now. You get a diploma and you're going right into a debtor's prison.
Yeah, well, you will. Yeah, carry that debt.
Right.
Yeah, well, it's there, and there's a real problem like that, and we still haven't got a system. Are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect? Look at what's going on in Gaza now.
Yeah, absolutely.
People being killed.
Sure, absolutely.
And that fighting going on. And the people in Israel feel besieged.
Right, sure.
And they got atomic weapons that can blow up the whole damn species.
Sure, absolutely.
It's an amazing time to be alive.
Well, it's amazing to be alive.
Yeah, it's amazing that we're still here.
Right, we're still here.
We came close in Cuba, didn't we?
Sure, absolutely. With what is around, it's amazing for us to still be here.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's because
by the skin of our teeth.
This could blow up any day.
I know. It blow up in a way that never could.
Right, absolutely.
Only since about 1970 we had the weapons that were able to be seen and modeled as being able to kill the entire Homo sapiens species. You think that's true?
Well, hey, look, the weapons are there,
The weapons are there. They got black ops and things like that, and they got all that. They couldn't do that in the Second World War. We were protected in the First World War, Civil War. We could kill 600,000 But you understand what I'm saying? This is a time to try men's souls in a big-time way.
Big-time way, and you really can't have that kind of trust in mankind today.
Okay, where can you get the trust? The Lord?
Well,
or what? Where do we get the trust? Where do we get the vision? Some of the people who are making the trouble have the most vision. I noticed the Romans didn't take very good thought about this fellow Jesus. He was talking about take care of the least among them through the money changes up.
Absolutely, right.
Can't have that.
No.
Well, you understand what I'm saying?
You
as a law, man of
absolutely,
the law.
right. Yeah, I understand very much.
So where does it stand on the on your situation specifically as a lawyer? We want to get you in the saddle or in the harness so that you can help the people that you've been helping for so long in your good career.
Well, for a long.
Are you able to still do that in an effective way? Yeah. Let's talk about some of that. We got to get you back.
I think so. For a long period of time, I was away from the law, and I wasn't necessarily uncomfortable with that, to be honest with you. Because there was so much other work to do.
What kind of stuff did you do?
Well, education, one of the things. And not necessarily education in terms of being in a college, but, education in terms of a university without walls. Just teaching the masses.
You were like, look at isn't that a great problem?
Right,
the internet, isn't that amazing?
Absolutely.
Isn't that a friggin' amazing thing?
And I do a lot.
Did you have a lot of books when you were a kid, 5 years old?
Absolutely. My mother had a lot of books.
But you didn't have an internet.
No, I didn't have an internet. But she had a lot of books. A
lot of books. You have Encyclopedia Britannica?
Oh yeah, the whole bit. And
you had that in your house.
Yeah.
You were sort of like you were comfortable there.
I was very comfortable with that, and I think that in terms of my mother, one of the things she was big on was history.
Yeah.
She was big on literature.
See, that's important.
And things like that, you know, and I really picked that up. You know?
And so you got interested in education. You know the term autodidact? People teaching themselves. I think maybe that's something that could be the glory and the activity of a lot of people who aren't going to be needed to do things, not only on the assembly line, but algorithmically, things can be done within the corporate structure. Vice president's clerk of this and that and that. That could all be done algorithmically and get rid of the need to have people and pay them wages for something that can be done by an algorithm.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that when you read about people, you know, one of the great person that I read a lot about was Malcolm X.
Yeah, oh God bless him.
And you know, and that's what he did for himself. He really taught himself.
Mr. Little.
And became one of the great figures.
He was out of Michigan.
That's sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
I know you are. Well, I'm out of Michigan too.
Are you?
I was born in Inkster, Michigan.
Don't tell me that. I had you pegged in Georgia. Welcome, Michigander. Okay.
I was. I am pegged in Georgia, but my mother. I was born in Michigan, and I lived there for a while.
I was too.
And my mother, however, felt like I should go back to Georgia, so that's why we left.
She wanted to go
back to Georgia.
Why?
Well,
what was she thinking? If I could, I don't want to pry or go into it in great depth.
No, but I think that what she was thinking is that we had a family structure in the South.
Cousins and stuff.
Right, sure.
That's important.
Right, that we didn't have in Michigan.
How had you gotten up to Inkster? I don't mean to pry again.
I think that like everything else, you know,
part of the
economic,
migration?
part of that, you know, and you know, working for Chrysler and those outfits, you know, and a lot of money then compared to being in the South.
1/6 of the American economy was in Detroit.
Absolutely,
it was all automobiles.
Sure, absolutely.
Now it's gone into bankruptcy.
But back then, I mean,
it was good.
And that's where they were.
A lot of green trees.
Sure,
around
absolutely, right. The whole 9 yards.
So,
So, but it was just that, you know, my mother realized that, you know, it was more than that.
Yeah.
You know, that money
and she
wasn't
had come
everything.
from Georgia.
She had come from Georgia.
Okay, so it was homesickness for the
it was sort of homesickness, but I think their plan was to stay in Michigan as long as possible.
Yeah.
And then to go back, you know, and try to do what you had to do in Georgia.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you
That's
know, it was very important for me because that's really where the family was, you know.
I didn't know. I should have known you came from Michigan.
Well,
I was in Michigan.
I never told you that. But I always heard, you know, I can always know that you always prided being from Michigan. I knew that you were from Michigan, but I never told you that I was born in Michigan.
It's revealed here today on this front. Now, what's the how are we doing on the reinstate Alton?
Sure. Well, I think it's twofold. You know, when I left the practice of law, I was probably involved in 4 high-profile cases at that point. But only 2 of them got really resolved. Maybe only 1 got really resolved. I represented the state of Yusuf Hawkins, who had been killed out in Bensonhurst.
Right.
And that case eventually ended up with Joseph Farmer getting 33 years to life. So I could, you know, leave that. The second case I was involved in was the Central Park 7.
Yeah, oh boy, wasn't that something?
Yeah.
Wasn't that something?
And so my client happened to be the only one that had his charges dismissed. So I was sort of free from that.
You see that film that Spielberg's made? Or his daughter Spielberg, the 7?
Well, you know, I haven't seen any of that yet, you know, myself.
It was quite good. The daughter of, I think, Spielberg,
Sarah Burns.
Burns, the guy who made the Civil War. What's his name?
See, the problem that I had with the case was because, I mean, I was literally there, you know, and dealing with it, confronting those who were prosecuting these young black boys and the whole bit. But I think the point that we have to remember, and this is one thing I wanted to raise when I go back in the federal court, because when this case is back on the calendar, I'll be there.
This is relating to reestablishment? This is
very much related to that. So, because when I go back in federal court, I want to know why I can't start practicing law again. Okay. I don't plan to make a
How were you blocked from it?
Well, I was bullying.
Bullying?
Judicial bullying.
I'm shocked.
Absolutely.
There's bullying in New York.
and the judiciary particularly.
Judiciary bullying in New York.
Right, sure, absolutely. Right,
yeah.
and so that's really what
it's
it
not
boils.
all sweetness and light.
No, it's not. It's
no,
not.
okay.
And
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
you know, but
Okay.
be that as it may,
Okay.
when I go back,
Yeah.
I want to raise the issue of the fact that it's not the Central Park 5 and it's not the Central Park 7, but what it is a class action.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
the NYPD took action against a class. That's how it becomes a class action. You know, it wasn't what an attorney may think. Well, I think I'm gonna call this a class action. No, you have to do what they did. And when I talk about they, I'm talking about the NYPD. All right,
Okay.
they decided to take action against a class. The class was blacks and Latinos,
right.
who were poor.
You're still
all right.
going,
So
still
therefore,
going.
in order for there to be adequate relief, the judiciary has to make this a class action, which means there has to be a lot more compensation than the $40 million that's on the table now.
Well, what were the? Well, yeah, there was two. There were two. What were the other four? There were two other things you were involved in.
Well,
You
the
said
the
that
other,
led to your.
well, the other
difficulty.
thing was Tawana Brawley.
Tawana, uptown,
Right,
upstate,
yeah.
Newburgh, yeah.
No, it was up in Poughkeepsie.
Poughkeepsie,
Right,
well,
Wapanger
New
Falls.
Yeah,
up in
Poughkeepsie,
that area, right?
yeah.
Up in that area,
Yeah.
and that is another miscarriage of justice, you know. And those kinds of cases that really bother people because the question that I want to raise in Tawana Brawley is how can a 15-year-old girl who was never served with legal papers end up owing the assistant district attorney, Stephen Pagonis, because she made the mistake, in quotation marks, of saying white cop when asked. Because that's how this case got started.
Is that what it got
Yeah,
started?
that's how it got started.
Yeah, really?
Because she was in the hospital, and the police officer came in from Poughkeepsie, and she was afraid of the white police officer.
Yeah.
So they brought a
Based
black
on
police officer.
experience.
Sure, they brought a black police officer in,
Yeah.
and he said, "Well, who did it?" And she said, "White cop."
White.
That was the
If
problem.
she'd said cop?
If she had said just cop or black cop, you know, or Latino cop, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, it may have been a different story, but when
Right.
she said white cop, I mean,
That set it off.
That set it off.
Isn't that something, man?
Just
Words matter.
Words really matter.
Man,
You know,
it shows the underbelly. of
absolutely.
things, yeah.
Which is why, you know, when I've tried cases, and I've tried a lot of them,
Yeah, you have.
there's only 2 cases I ever let a black person, testify in. You know, because my rule is black people shouldn't be on a witness stand.
Oh, okay, I'll ask why, but go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and so therefore,
Because go
well,
ahead.
you know,
Because of the prejudice of the system.
you know, you go back. The reality of it is,
Yeah.
we really speak 2 different languages.
Yeah.
Okay, blacks and whites, and we don't understand what each other's saying. You know, and so you know that can become very fatalistic.
Yeah.
When you have a language problem.
Yeah,
I mean, we all speak the English language.
Yeah, right.
But it's just a different version.
Right.
And it's that version that we speak that causes problems.
And that probably applies to much of the world.
Yeah.
Nation to nation.
Sure. Right. Absolutely. Language.
Prejudice.
Sure. Absolutely.
Subconscious thoughts.
Sure. Absolutely.
All that kind of stuff is what we're wrestling with, right?
That's what we're wrestling with.
Prejudice.
Sure,
Yeah.
we're wrestling.
Prejudice.
Because somebody comes to this country, they can't speak the language, they got a problem. You know, and see, my theory is, as far as it relates to black people, no black person, if he did or she did testify, should do so without an interpreter. They need an interpreter. You see, and the system does not provide for those interpreters.
I'm going to take a little sidebar thing. I got a friend of mine, Korea guy. He's working on a thing. He's a design guy, young, out of Korea.
Right.
Got a couple of patents and that, and he's got a thing he was talking to me about. I'm going to have to replay it. We got a problem. But he has a thing. It's algorithmic, and it's a thing where he's going to take, as I understand it, as a layman, that he's taking the incredible array of carefully nuanced use of the color spectrum, 10 million shades of light yellow, and that kind of thing, and green, all that, as a thing to algorithmically develop a technology that would make it possible for a person, you're sitting here, let's say you're Swahili, you're African, you don't know English, right?
Right.
And I'm talking, and you're hearing it in real time, back and forth, and I'm talking in English, and it comes out in your ear in Swahili. You talk in Swahili, it comes out in my ear in
right,
English.
sure, absolutely.
And it would be the languages of the world, to get over the language barrier.
Right,
There are
sure.
205 countries in the world, and they're still, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Do you think that would be a big involvement?
Well, it'd be a big improvement. It would be a big improvement. It would be an improvement.
Yeah, and I think they may be getting close to it.
Yeah.
Now he's got to do it try to do it entrepreneurially, and a new thing. It could be a new Google or something. You know, that would be a big. But wouldn't that be a big thing?
It'd be a big improvement.
Now, if we could just get that nuance to where all the prejudices that are built into the various differences that exist among us, we might be able to get some real education going. You understand
absolutely.
what I'm saying?
I agree.
You agree?
I agree wholeheartedly.
That's something worth putting some attention
to. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much
and
so.
that's where your sentiment and your thought and your motivation is, I would
Absolutely.
suggest.
Right.
Good man. Yeah. Anyway, so still, how does it all stand?
Well, I think it stands real good because the reality of it was that although everybody was told that I had been disbarred, even though the suspension order said suspension, the reality of it was I'd never been either. Because you see, in no instance was I ever given a hearing until after the fact.
Didn't that have to be part of the procedure if you're following the procedure without bastardizing what the procedure said, the system?
Well, the thing of it is to me, it's incontrovertible that these things happen, you know. So I don't think anybody can say, well, it didn't happen. I mean, the mere fact was every time an action was taken against me, it was after the fact. It wasn't beforehand, you know, even though the Supreme Court of the United States and all of these institutions say that you have a right to due process of law, and if there's an interest that you're about to lose, that a hearing has to occur before that interest is lost. You know, in my case, in every instance, there was none of that.
Well, isn't that prima facie? How could it have been enacted, or how can it? There isn't anything that has to be overturned because it was there.
Right, sure, on the face.
On
the face.
Now, where do you take something like that? Are there judiciary, disciplinary systems?
No, I tell you where I take. Where you take.
Where do you deliver the brief?
I take. You don't deliver the brief anyway. You just produce the body. That's me.
Okay.
You know, you go into court and you say, I'm back. I'm ready to start.
Okay.
And now if somebody wants to say you can't do that, or we're going to put you on arrest, or whatever the case might be, they can do whatever they got to do. But for me, nothing has ever happened. Nothing has ever prevented me from doing what I was taught to do.
Are you thinking of doing that?
Oh, yeah, I am going to do it.
You are when?
Oh, yeah. Well, as soon as case is back on the calendar, I'm going to be doing it. I'll probably be doing it before September.
September this year?
Absolutely. Right.
They're already, okay. You're going to let the world know that you're going to do that?
Absolutely. Let the world know. And
well, you could let them know right here in a minute.
Sure, absolutely. I will.
Let people know. We'll get some people in your corner.
Sure, absolutely.
Would you mind having some people in your corner? Do you want placards?
Well, I have no problem.
Do you want placards?
I have no problem with people being there and then deciding what they ought to do from what they hear, you know, because
there's a lot of attention to your situation, isn't it?
Absolutely, it is. It is.
Legitimately and appropriately.
It is.
And it's a model not only for Alton Maddox, but for the world.
Absolutely, for
the
the
world. Think? Can you see that?
Oh, yeah, there's no question about it. Because you see, you know, we had 4 black attorneys in the Central Park 7.
Yeah.
And all 4 of them were disbarred.
No fooling. I didn't know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that.
Sure. 1 was suspended, the 3 were disbarred.
Why?
Because of race. Because
no. They can't say because you're black. I mean, they can't say that. They'd have to. They can use language. You have to have an interpretation of the damn language to English.
You're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
But they wanted to send a chilling message.
Yeah.
You know, don't get involved in these kinds of cases. That was the message. You know, you can do certain things in the law, but stay in your place.
And that was all before it came out that it had all been bogus.
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
At that time, they were still thought of in the prejudice of the press as being
the attack on all of the attorneys occurred before that.
Yeah. Right.
So
before the truth came out.
Right, before the truth came out.
Isn't that something,
right,
man?
absolutely.
What happened afterward? Did they ever get reinstated?
No. Well, one got reinstated and one died.
What, did they ever get an apology? Did they
no,
ever,
no,
No,
absolutely not.
or nothing like that.
And that's the reason why I'm going to be in federal court. Say, look, how can you settle this case and there's a lot of dirt still on the floor?
Yeah, well, like that. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. They're talking about this thing in Gaza going on. It's really worrying and all that kind of stuff. And then, I was thinking more directly about the thing up in Ukraine.
Sure.
That airplane shot down.
Sure.
And what they're talking about is it begins to look like, from what's reported, you get a prejudicial thing. I like watch Al Jazeera or something other than American coverage.
Absolutely.
You get a prejudicial thing. It's part of the whole process. And they're saying it was the people that were responsible for it all were the renegades in eastern Ukraine and that, or the protest, and they did that, and they get it. And what may have, but I saw the guy from what's his name? He was on the other day. He was saying that Ukraine has been bombing those areas with airplanes on a regular basis, just firebombing almost buildings, killing people, killing from the air and everything, and that they had shot down a number of planes.
Right.
Now, it may well be that when they had this thing that would be possible, they thought they have shot some of the planes down being on the defensive, like the poor people, you could say, or the guerrillas or something. But they may have made a mistake in shooting down the one where we're all upset because there were so many civilians killed. Could have been a mistake. Now, if and they say that, and so you say it was a mistake. Now, when did we ever get somebody who came forth in a meaningful way for the mistake of killing 4 million people in Vietnam? Or the big guys. They get away with massive killing and doing it within a pattern like that. Or when did we ever get retribution for this cockamamie idea of slavery? Be called retribution. Or what do you call it?
Reparations.
Reparations, that kind of thing. That kind. When did the strong ever apologize for their mistakes, as they say, and put one little mistake that could be understood in those human terms? It was a mistake, and everything in a wartime thing. When does the establishment ever apologize for the mistakes that they have historically made, or even consciously made? If you understand what I'm saying.
I understand very much so.
And so Tuala Bromley.
Sure.
So it came out. Did they ever say down, we're really sorry, we found out it was this other guy, and those guys are totally free? I mean, totally.
Sure, absolutely, right.
And yet they just let the persecution of the lawyers who had fought for that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly. And that's the reason why this case can't be settled on those terms, not when there's still a lot of dirt on the rug. Just like the situation with Eric Garner, the young black out in Staten Island.
Don't know.
The black man with chokehold.
Okay.
The Lord.
Just now.
Yeah,
just now in the news.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another situation. I mean, people say, well, we just made a mistake. We hit the wrong target, or we applied a chokehold to the wrong target. I mean,
you can make an analogy.
It's the same kind of situation. These things are happening, and still, the question becomes, how much deeper do you go to resolve those things?
Right.
And unfortunately, in New York City, this town is big on hush money.
There's a lot of shenanigans going on in the real estate industry and in the people who run the city and the people who run the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of hush lobbying and all this kind of things, buying things, lobbying.
Yeah, and
huge amounts of
money. And this is the problem. I was involved in a case some time ago called Michael Stewart. Young man who had been killed by the police, and he was in a coma for nearly 2 weeks before he died. And, later, we decided we wanted to take the case to trial. Well, in this city, you can't take those cases to trial.
Why?
Because the Bar Association won't allow it.
Why?
Because
why? What's the rationale for that? I mean, why don't they?
Well, the rationale is certain people need to be protected.
Yeah, certain people being... No, use English.
Well, certain people, like in Michael Stewart case, the mayor of the city of New York, Ed Koch, or the medical examiner, Ellie Gross.
Or
they need to be protected in that particular case. There were other people need to be protected as well.
Or the king in the castle.
Right, the king in the castle. You know, so you're dealing with
dirty
those,
rascal.
right? Absolutely.
Let he be.
Right, sure. So that's the problem with hush money, because hush money suppresses the truth. So you never know really what happened. You know, so my feeling is all of these cases should go to trial.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, every last one of them, and let the public see what really happened and how things are really done in this city. Because as long as you keep,
this world.
Yeah, absolutely.
The city, the world.
Right, absolutely. Because you see,
these are universal
right,
things.
Absolutely,
that we're facing,
sure, absolutely. Because you see, the reality of it is, if we don't ever get to the truth, people are gonna always be paying large sums of money that are not unnecessary. You know, because you got people here in this city, everybody's talking about, well, the tax is so high. Well, part of the reason why the tax is so high, because this city uses hush money. It suppresses the truth.
That's like that could be called in a less term, that could be called like a bribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like bribery.
Sure, absolutely. Official bribery, state sanctioned bribery.
Right,
absolutely.
Bribery.
Right, sure,
it's
absolutely.
The way
right,
greasing the wheels.
Well, that's it, right, sure.
And that's always been the case.
That's
Do you
always
think
been
all of human history.
Sure, absolutely. That's
so
always,
we should be a little easy. Is that it's not so different from history.
Yeah, because you see, it goes back to what you were saying from the beginning about large fee, like attorneys charging $1,000 an hour.
Yeah.
You see, but the benefit of that is by making large sums of money, income is elevated over justice.
Yeah.
So when lawyers are supposed to be pursuers of justice, you see.
Well, they're pursuers of big fees.
Well, that's the whole problem.
Yeah, right.
That's where the problem comes in, because when you have now violated your oath of office, and instead of pursuing justice, you're pursuing money, we got a real problem
but
here.
That whole thing is largely winked at by the political class, is it not?
Well, because
just winked at that moral statement you made. Well, that's not, you're an idealist or something. Never can be. The rich have to get all their capital to invest, and they can do great things for us, and just settle down and hold your line of cotton.
Yeah, well,
in the field.
Right,
that's essentially the attitude.
That is the attitude, but it's a system that has gone broke.
Yeah,
you know, and
it is going broke. This guy Piketty.
Yeah,
he's saying that everybody in Washington's reading that book.
Okay,
you know that's the book everybody's reading. The president on down, everybody's reading, and it is that they have a real bind because they do not have the way of distributing effective buying power to the people of the world. When it's all the capital assets making the production as opposed to the labor that used to have to be there.
Okay.
You understand? And that's the biggest problem, because they got a tremendous capability of doing good stuff for everybody, but they can't realize it because the people don't have the ability to buy what can, the good life that can be produced in a way that it never has been able to do. So there's a lot of frustration.
Right.
You understand?
I understand very well.
And there's nobody coming forward with a policy that can set up a way to get some money to people on a regular basis without them being a wage slave.
Yeah, because of the fact, because the decision makers are the ones who are receiving this tainted money.
Well, okay, that's true, but maybe it's the intellectuals too. Maybe the intellectuals haven't come up with a way. We had Keynes, right? You read economics,
absolutely.
Keynes and Schumpeter and Van Hayek and all this. We had all this stuff and everything. We got the Georges, and we got this and that. We haven't come up with a system that is relevant to the capability, not the reality. Inherited reality is always going to be dragging back. It's going to be, we got reified institutions, architecture, everything. Court systems, thought patterns are reified, and we don't want to throw that out without cavalierly, but it have to have something that relates to the capability, which is separate from what the reality is. That's what we want to be able to realize. We don't ever realize a way to get to the future that could be liberating of the whole damn system, including all human beings and the ecology, which we have a unique capability offsetting the destructive capability of the weapons that have finally come to a final point of species lethality. I don't know, what do you think?
I think when you talk about destruction, I think you're absolutely right.
But what about the possibility that we have a maybe how would you translate that into sort of language or something, is that we may have at the level of capability, it's just out there every day, Alton. There comes over the transom news of a new breakthrough in every field, field going. You know,
absolutely.
It's just startling, the things that are going on. You can't comprehend it. And we don't, how would you translate that into reality that it would affect the things in we may have collectively as a human species within an ecological order within the universe transcended material scarcity.
Sure. Well,
Do you hear what I say? Can you understand it?
I understand exactly
what
you're
you're saying. There is enough.
And I'm going to give you a little history lesson.
Can we get to that?
I'm going to give you a little history lesson.
Okay, give me some. We only got about 3 minutes left.
Okay. Well, the history lesson is the atomic bomb and the power of the atom did not start in 1945 or whenever.
No.
It started with ancient Egypt. They had that same capability.
Okay.
I mean, they understood the atom. They understood how to use it, but they never used it in a destructive fashion.
Yeah.
You see, because the reality is their ethics. That's the whole thing. You're talking about people who lack the ethics, and so they have these destructive powers, and they're using them in any way possible.
But what do you mean ancient Egypt? You mean there was somebody, was it Ptolemy or what?
Sure.
Or
Ptolemy,
the ancient, pre-Ptolemy?
Sure.
Or what?
No, ancient
Kemetic?
Sure, absolutely.
In, Sudan and that?
Right, yeah.
Well, they may have known about the atom, but they didn't have the technology, the capability of making the weapons.
They did. They had it.
They did.
They did.
Okay, send me chapter and verse.
Okay, I will.
Okay?
I will.
I would like to know.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of stuff coming out of the Sudan.
Sure, absolutely, right.
Yeah.
And those capabilities did exist.
Okay.
And the point is that this may be a discussion for another day.
Oh, over a beer.
But sure, or whatever we want to do.
Ale.
Absolutely, right.
All right, yeah.
But the reality of it is that those things did exist, but they was in the hands of people who were ethical.
Well, okay, well, that's one argument you could say, but I think it's better to maybe just see it in evolutionary terms. I mean, it's just, we got I don't think you've been able to have the capability as I was thinking of it until about the year 1970, after 200,000 years of our existence on the planet. That this is not your normal historical time, like a new Republican or Democrat or a French Revolution or something, even though it's blowing in the wind, Bobby Dylan.
Right.
But that this is a very unique moment in evolutionary terms, is my thought.
Right.
And you're fighting the good fight toward getting something for the people that we have to do, and we're trying to encourage that here at MNN too.
Sure, absolutely.
You ought to become a producer over here at MNN in your spare time, although I don't think you have much spare time with all the good work you're doing.
Well,
but Manhattan Network's a place you can come produce it and not be thinking about money.
Well,
do you realize how?
I understand the concept, very much,
Yeah, but that's really something
it's
unique.
It's a great concept.
When the only thing that's motivating human society is money, almost in the minds of 99% of the people unnecessarily, and it ought to be addressed.
Right, sure. But it's a great concept.
And ought to directly teach our leaders.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Now, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean I talked too much, but I think we're in agreement on the basic principle.
Oh, absolutely, right.
I want to find out about that stuff in ancient Egypt and all that, because I know there's a rich
Well,
thing
next
there.
time I come back, we'll do that.
We got to do more of this.
Right, absolutely.
And you got to come over to the house.
Okay,
I want you to meet the dog.
Okay, right.
The new dog is funnier than Charlie Chaplin.
All right.
Okay?
I look forward.
And you can talk to him. He will listen.
I look forward to meeting the dog, but the cat.
He'd be a black and white dog.
But the cat may be another
The cat,
issue.
I heard about it. We'll put it on the porch. Alton, so good to talk to you.
All right.
So
Nice
good for you
to
to talk
to
a giant of the legal
profession
and keeping things on the straight and narrow the way they should be. It's Alton Maddox. And happy to have that protection. I'm glad to have you in public access. We're trying to celebrate public access this week. Your pleasure to have his perceptions. Coming back again, tomorrow. And Alton, thanks a lot. And
I appreciate it. Thanks for the invitation.
We've got to keep meeting like this.
No, we do. We do.
Good night. Thank you for viewing. We're coming back tomorrow. Say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right.
Okay, that's a wrap.
Okay.